Well, in 1966, I was on staff as a cameraman at ABC Network, and I just finished a dramatic special with Leela Swift, and she and I got along very well, and she sort of liked my talent that I had in the way of composing a picture and my, the way I handled a camera. And she said to me that later on in around June or so, they're going to do a new soap opera. And I said, "Oh my God, you want to do a new soap opera? I don't want, keep me with the specials or something interesting." She says, "No, no, no. This is going to be sort of a gothic type of a soap opera. It's going to be something very different. It's going to be very creative, and I would like you to be the first cameraman that we hire, or put in this position." So Leela Swift, who is an extraordinary director, and she was starting out her career at NBC and then moved over to ABC, she was just fantastic. And she did a show also with John Woods and Ross Skipper, who was also cameraman on a couple shows I did. They said, Leela asked us to also be a team of the cameramen. There's 3 cameras, and we're going to have three cameramen on the show. And she said, "I think you're going to have a lot of fun. I think it's going to be terrific, and we're going to start the pilot in June of 1966, and just look at tech records and see when your schedule is, and we'll probably have a pre-meeting before we start to do anything." And that's how I got started in going into being one of the cameramen for Dark Shadows in the very, very beginning. In the very beginning, when we started out, we were using black and white cameras, which were very, very bulky, and basically these black and white cameras had what they called turrets, in which you put different lenses on the different turrets. You had a 50mm lens, a 90mm lens. Occasionally, you would have to change the turret and put what they call a push zoom lens on if the action called for it. But you couldn't do this while you were doing the show, because we did the show as if we were doing it absolutely live. Sometimes we banged into people, we banged into doors, we banged into each other. It was like really live television in those days. So what happened in the sets were so small. The ABC had us in a new studio down on 53rd Street between 9th and 10th. Actually, it was an old lumber yard that they changed and they converted it into a studio. But in those days, it's like, they didn't care. They just built the sets, and they built them very close to one another, not realizing the cameras are very bulky. They had a lot of these characters with the blue whale, I think was the name of the bar. A lot of different sets that were very gothic and very, very large. And for us to maneuver, especially when we were actually doing the show, it was impossible. We'd just be bumping into the doors and unfortunately make a lot of noise. Well, they forgave us for that in the beginning. As the series progressed and we found out, that we're now dealing with sort of a horror theme, and it's like a vampire theme, and we all try to get creative, especially Leela and myself and the other cameramen, and especially, I guess, myself, because Leela and I had a great feeling of the different types of moves we had to make and what type of effects. Now, you got to realize this is long before CGI. This is long before Star Wars. This is long before they knew, any effects in television. They did do them in movies, but of course you had to do, the movie type of effects took many, many, many weeks. So we try to come up with effects that would, be very apropos to the story. So I found a trick. I don't know where I learned it or how I found it, but we had a lens that was about this size, and I would take Saran wrap and I would stretch it around the lens. And I would put a rubber band that it would be fastened to the lens, and I would take Vaseline with a little Q-tip, and I would jaggedly outline the little corners of it. And I found out when I was focused in on one of the characters, and especially when they were going through sort of a surreal type of a situation, if I zoomed in and out slowly, it gave a very spooky effect. Dan liked it, everybody seemed to like it, and the audience apparently seemed to like it, because apparently we scared the daylights out of a lot of people. It's one of the type of things and one of the effects that we started to experiment with and do. And it was great, because it's like, we creating cobwebs. Nowadays, all these type of effects are so much more sophisticated. But in those days, we had to do different types of effects that would make it spooky and make it also very realistically spooky, so the audience would really be able to, appreciate it and to buy it. Like Angelique, when she would come out of the flames. That was a bucket of flames that we had, and I'll never forget, with some of the stagehands standing by just offset with the fire extinguishers, just in case I got on fire, the camera got on fire, the actress got on fire. They would put the lens close by, not close by, but in a proximity to where I could zoom in and out, and through these flames that would look like Angelique was coming right out of the flames. All it was really was a bucket of flames that we would just create with a little smoke in front of the lens. So this was the early days of special effects for videotape, and we all had a lot of fun. We all tried to do things that were like exciting for the show, because we all felt a very, very strong team effort in making the show as great as it could be. And many times, I mean, I'd walk out with Catherine Scott out of the door. I'd walk out with Johnny Carlin or whatever, and they mobbed them for autographs, because there was always a base of fans out there. And they said, "Give me your autograph." I said, "I'm just a camera. Give me your autograph. I don't care. You're part of the show." They didn't care what we are. And so I must have given out a lot of autographs. Not worth any today, really, I tell you that. But anyway, it was a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun in working as a really close unit. In those days, it took us a whole day to do a half-hour show. I mean, nowadays they do hour shows. The soap operas are usually an hour, and it takes them about a day to do that. But in the early days, we had a lot to learn. We'd have a call, say, an 8 to 9 o'clock call. We get in there. The technical director, Jake, and Leela would go. Jake was the technical director, and Leela, most all the time, unless he was sick, then they'd have a fill-in. And Leela and Henry Kaplan also was one of the directors in the early days. They'd have what they call shot cards. On each card, for each scene, would be, say, shot 1, 6, 7, 9, 11, whatever, and it would say 2X, 2 ECU would mean a 2-shot or a close-up, and ECU is an extreme close-up. They would say the shot cards would say to us exactly what shot in which scene that would have to, be shot. So basically, we would go through this before we even got on camera. We'd look at this. We'd have any questions. We go to Leela or we go to Jake, and we say, "Look, I don't understand this. It says I have a 2-shot of Jonathan and John Carlin. And basically, it says I have to hold them, and then I have to arc around to where I'm going to come around behind them and get the stairway in the shot." So a lot of these shots, or a lot of the shots that were in the shot card, sometimes if you didn't understand them, you would go, and this was our prep work that we do before we even got on to what they called camera blocking. Now this is the first time this would happen, probably somewhere between 9 and 9:15 in the morning. This was every morning, Monday to Friday. This was our schedule. So we would go through about an hour and a half of what they call stop and go camera blocking, where they would have the actors just in their regular street clothes, and we would just be taking shots, trying to get the right focus, trying to get the right feeling, trying to get the right feeling of what the director wanted, and be familiarizing ourselves with these type of shots. So we would go through this for about 2 hours, from 9 to about 11. Sometimes we would then have notes afterwards, the actors would have notes afterwards, and then we would break for an hour lunch. Sometimes it was an hour and 15 minutes, sometimes it was just about an hour. But because we were down on 53rd Street, there was not many lunch places close by. You'd have to go up to 9th Avenue, and in those days especially. So anyway, we get back, we'd all unwind a little from lunch, and then we go through what they would be calling a rehearsal, a camera rehearsal. Sometimes it was in partial dress, sometimes it was not. They'd do that, then they'd have more notes, then they go through what they call dress rehearsal, of which time, when they had the tape, a lot of times they would tape the dress rehearsal, and in the beginning they didn't, because we hadn't much time, and it was hard for the actors to learn the lines, and for us to get the right feeling of the shots and get the right mood. And then they would do the show, I think it was on 4 to 4:30, and we'd do it like it was live. And some days when the tape machine wasn't working, we actually went on live, which was really very scary for not only us, but the other actors. In those days, you got to remember, on each of the cameras, they had a teleprompter. They don't have that anymore nowadays that I know of in soap operas. I don't think they have the teleprompters on the cameras. They might. I'm not quite sure if they still do. But in those days, they had a teleprompters in each camera, and somebody actually running the lines of each actor. So if they got confused, they'd look over at the camera and they'd come back again, and they'd be able to talk about their lines or say their exact lines to us. There was a lot of things in those days we all learned together. We all sort of to get the feeling so we could really put on the show, because actually everybody just wanted to make it exciting, and they wanted to make it vibrant, and they wanted the audience to be there with them.